Hey, Jason, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you again for having me. Been a huge fan for a while. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. Actually been doing direct sales for about 10 years now. Got into it. It's something that I never thought that I would fall into, but once I got into it, I found a huge passion for it. Right now, I'm doing contract security sales, and my territory is the southeastern U.S. So pretty much Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida.
Yeah. And why sales for you?
Like I said, it's something I kind of fell back into. I actually started out in law enforcement. I did that for 8 years in the Charlotte area, and started to have a growing family and took a job at a 3PL. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and super fast pace, very uncomfortable at first, but then I started to kind of understand how to do things, and kind of the rest is history. I went and came over to the company I'm at now, initially in like a 50-50 ops sales role, B2B. And the last several years, I've been in just straight direct sales for the same company. So never thought I'd be in sales, but now that I'm in it, I don't think I will ever leave sales.
Yeah. And was there anything about being a police officer that transferred into sales, or maybe the empathy or the
Oh
reading?
yeah, oh yeah, a lot of empathy, patience. Kind of getting it's really translated well in like the qualification portion, being able to like empathize, hear people's pain points, kind of put yourself in their shoes,
Yeah.
feel kind of get a good feel on what they're trying to achieve, and be a problem solver. So there's actually a lot. You wouldn't think so, but there's actually a lot that translated with people skills, talking to people from all walks of life with all different types of issues, and just being able to help, each one individually, one by one, to their specific issues.
I bet the emotional regulation also helped
Absolutely. Absolutely.
because as a police officer, you're not dealing with people in their best situations, right?
Oh, it's allowed me to have a ton of patience. So, and also, everything's raw and in real life in law enforcement. So it's like I can take rejection, failure, no too high and no too lows for me.
Yeah. And how'd you get good at sales, though?
So when, like, to take things back at the 3PL, I was, to begin in it, it was kind of like throw you out to the wolves, and I was absolutely terrible at it. It is when I started, I was trying to get. I thought, you just go with whatever is
You're
online
told.
that you could
Yeah.
study and self improve. And what I was doing at first, I was too focused on the product or service. And then once I realized that it's not about me or the product or service, and it's about them, and start listening, that's when it really started to click for me.
Yeah. And what were you listening for?
Again, like pain points, what's important, what are their values, what are their financial situations, why are they reaching out? There's obviously something that's important to them that they're trying to achieve. So I mean, some of them have immediate needs, some of them they're just getting quotes for the following year. So they're all different, and a lot of the issues are similar, and some are completely night and day. So it's just listening for their specific needs, values, pain points, and trying to figure out how you could customize like the perfect plan for them.
Yeah. And how long did it take before you got good at it?
Oh boy. Um, it wasn't overnight. I would say about 2 years.
Yeah. It's not
So
bad.
there was a lot of failure, and I think that's one of the things that I tell my team is it's not an overnight. Usually, when people come into it and they see people with outstanding results and a lot of opportunities, it can cause them to get discouraged. And a lot of times I'll have to tell them, like, look, there's going to be a lot of failures and a lot of trial and error before this clicks. It doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of self improvement, a lot of failure, learning how to take that in stride. So it took me. I think if you were to ask my teammates, they'd probably say it was overnight. It was not overnight. It took several years.
Yeah.
So
And what's the hardest part of your sale?
um so I think when you look at sales, there's two different types. For me, sales actually is it there's not a lot of difficulties, but if there's one, it's like from what your videos even showed, it's that sales ops buy-in, trying to get others to kind of see the vision on not just what this does to your P&L today, but how is this going to help your P&L in 1 year? How is it going to help in 3 years? So
Okay.
it's getting other people to kind of understand the vision.
Yeah. And what's the price point on your sale? Is it 5,000, 10,000, 100,000?
It's anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000.
Okay.
So I mean, there's a ton of services and products. That's why everything that I do is custom.
Yeah. And who are you selling to?
So a lot, like in some verticals, it is the procurement team, and some it's most of the time it's your property management team,
Yeah.
directors, VPs, regionals, community managers, general managers, facility managers. So really depends on the vertical, but most of the time it's that VP of property management.
Yeah. And what do they care about?
Some care about financials and some care about the issues. Some care about both. It's really it's all custom to that specific individual. They all have different needs and values.
Yeah. And is it, give me a sense of, is it competitive or is it a new greenfield type of market or?
So when you think about security, it's like it is one of the, if not the oldest professions in humanity. So what we do that's special is historically, the more the need, the more bodies you throw at people.
Yeah.
We've taken a different approach a lot with mobile guarding and patrol services paired like with integrated solutions like technology packages with remote guarding, motion analytics, call down speakers. So it really helps to kind of zero in on the historical data on whether or not they're having issues at night, weekends, holidays, whatever it is. We can kind of zero in where on the property, but they also have that the accessibility to having a mobile officer 24/7, 365. So even though the needs 24/7, they don't have to pay 24/7. So it's typically 60, 70% less the cost than traditional security.
Yeah. And what makes you good at this? The police background must help, right? Is that kind of
It definitely helps. I think, like I said earlier, it's a lot of it's just being passionate, believing what I'm doing.
yeah,
I really believe in the cause. Like this is, even though when we're in sales, it's day to day, conversations. It's what we do. But for the individuals we're talking with, these are like real life issues. These are very important to them. So it's something I'm extremely passionate about, and it's something that I can empathize with my clients with.
and what makes a great sales rep in this space?
Um, it's someone who's not afraid to fail, self-improvement, being proactive, not reactive. A lot of sales reps are, they kind of get a little bit complacent on being reactive, waiting for the phone to ring. And if COVID taught us anything, it's you have to learn how to pivot in real time in the real world. Like it's kind of one of those conversations where you hear, what's more important to sales, motivation or discipline. I am 100% believer that it's discipline. When like during that stretch of COVID, I had zero motivation, but that is when I logged my most amount of hours, and our traditional clients were going away. A lot of new opportunities presented themselves that didn't historically need security. So I was doing a lot of pivoting, throwing as much mud at the wall to try and figure out who needs us.
Yeah.
So I think it's someone who's proactive that try and gets ahead of the market, and just someone that's able to think outside the box. And hey, historically we've done this, but that's not what the world's experiencing right now. We have to be able to pivot, and you have to kind of understand, all of your markets, what the verticals are doing, and try and throw, as much mud at the wall, like I was saying.
Yeah. And I get the proactiveness on the prospecting, but how about on the sale itself? Because I think a lot of reps are too reactive. I mean, everyone's good when someone calls, right?
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. Taking the order is great. Trust
It's
me.
pretty easy.
Yeah, if that happens, I can go ahead and wrap a ribbon on it because that's an early Christmas present. So
Yeah. And people are great at answering questions about their company, their product, and
right.
them.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've learned, especially since, and I'm not sure, I don't think this is just specific to my industry, but I've noticed that the sales cycle has actually gotten a little bit longer. There's more decision makers than just one. There's like previously it was you get sign off from the management group and B2B and you're good to go. That I think ownerships are taking a lot more steps to kind of have oversight of their financials. And I think again, talking about patience earlier, that's I think something that's you have to have that patience and prioritization to be able to figure out, hey, this individual I'm talking to now was the decision maker at one point, is now the influencer. So
Yeah.
I've noticed that sales cycle's gotten about twice as long.
And that brings up, I mean, patience. How do you view patience in sales? You've
Oh,
used the word a couple times.
it's somewhat of an oxymoron, right? Sales and
Well,
patience, but
a lot of people look at it as just waiting,
right.
but it's also knowing how long things take and not ruining it by keep opening the oven and seeing if it's done yet.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that I do, especially when it comes into waiting or patience or however you look at it, it's I try not to flood. I try and keep as much communication as possible, but they're never just follow-ups. Hey, what's the status? Where are we at? No one wants to hear that. That goes straight to junk folder. So kind of the way I handle that is when I reach out to them, it's with real-time information, updates, hey, this is how capacities look, and this is what we look like if we jump in at this point. So each time I touch base, it's to give them an update on somewhat of my insight on what I'm experiencing. Hey, I know we were looking at a 2-week rollout. It's looking more like a 6-week rollout. So I still keep that constant communication, but I don't do it with just fluff. I'm trying to keep them informed with what's going on my end to give them as much insight as possible.
And what did you do wrong early that you now,
Everything.
yeah.
I think the patience is something that came over time. I think I was too concerned about me and what I was saying and what the product and service was that I would try and jam it down people's throat. And that's the opposite way to do sales. I think that's one of the biggest things I was doing wrong. And obviously confidence comes in over time because at the end of the day, it's still like a transference of emotion. If you're unsure about what you're speaking about, they're going to be unsure about what you're speaking about. So those are some things that took a lot of time, but at the end of the day, it was just being more patient in the qualification process. I never, like what I talk about with my team all the time. It's you never when you look at the sales cycle, it almost looks like it flows naturally in the qualification proposing. No, you never propose, beforehand. And just because people have certain needs today, that doesn't mean that's what their needs are going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'm continuously qualifying the individuals, making sure, hey, are these still the issues? Most of the time, the issues change, by the season. So it's something that I have to stay on top of proactively to make sure that it's still the right plan, even though it was the right plan last quarter, doesn't mean it was the right plan this quarter.
And how do you communicate that value up? Because it's what it sounds like after COVID, the scrutiny on spend has bubbled up instead of down, where
Oh yeah.
before people had a little bit more control over budget. I got to imagine the people up above don't understand the value. Is that true? Or
No, it's 100% true.
yeah,
And with what I do, security, it's kind of like having insurance. Like nobody thinks about really that they need it until after something happens and they wish they had it. So it's also the company that I'm with now. So it's Securitas Security. One of the great things that they offer is the ability to do several integrated approaches. It's a global company, so we can tap into all different types of technology. Maybe the right solution is boots on the ground, but most of the time, especially these days, it's not necessarily the case. With mobile guarding and technology, a lot of the times that spend and the scrutiny on spend actually works in our favor because we have the flexibility and the resources to give them, if not the same amount of coverage, twice as much coverage at over half of the cost.
Yeah.
So it's actually it's benefited our company a lot.
But how do you communicate that to the people writing the check, though? I mean, what do they look at this as? Because I'm sure somebody says, "Oh, here, 100K, what do we get?"
But for sure. So I mean, you have to understand the value of the products and services you're selling. You've got to do your homework, not just on the people that you're speaking with, but you've got to know what your company has to offer. So if that value is keeping, $400,000 of catalytic converter thefts over a 30K option, that pretty much sells itself. So
Yeah.
it's just about finding the right solution and knowing what your offerings are and making sure it's custom. I never try and force a solution just to get the sale. I would rather have the relationship long term and be patient and be able to help when the time's right.
And where do your deals get stuck?
Um,
Because everybody wants security, right?
right,
Like
right.
everybody wants insurance.
Exactly. It's usually during that procurement process once it goes upward. And so a lot of the times the management teams will select a deal that works perfect along with what their P&L is and what their needs are. But once it goes upward, that's kind of when you start to see things stall out for a little bit. And
Yeah.
that again, that's that extended sales cycle.
Right. Have you found a way around that, or a proactive way of getting ahead of that?
There's not, I think there's not too many shortcuts that you could take. There's really no easy way. So the best thing that I have just found to do is to shed as much awareness and education up front as you possibly can. I mean, if you can get the influencers to fully understand the value, they're going to be the ones that are going to get things to proceed moving forward in procurement and at the C-suite level. So it's just doing your due diligence up front in the education process.
Yeah. And are the champions literate enough or persuasive enough to get it done? Or are they kind of milk toast and
Well, I mean, they're all different. That's why it's like you have to you've got to do your job up front. That's where the difference between the order takers and the salespeople. That's when salespeople have to roll their sleeves up, and that's where we make our money. Is you better do a good job educating the value to make the influencers see what they're going to get in return by making this investment.
And do you run into the commodity trap a lot where it's like, well, you know, my cousin Jerry does some of this stuff on long weekends. Maybe he can help us, or
Yeah, sometimes, not a lot, and I think for the commodity based buyers, I mean that's what Amazon's for, right?
yeah.
That's there's a huge market for what we do just based on being the consultants, not just in sales, but hey, this is what you're at. I would say 90% of the time when I get phone calls inbounds or I make an outbound and they have a somewhat of an idea, like, look, at the end of the day, I'm the expert in security. That's the difference. A lot of people will fall into that trap when they're buyers by doing the shopping and not getting a good consultant that's just pushing something down their throat. They think that's the right solution, and it's our job to tell them, even if it's not the right time for our partnership, I like them walking away knowing, okay, well, this is what we're going to do for right now, but in the future, that's my guy.
Yeah. And what makes or if you, are you a hiring manager also, or are you an individual contributor?
So, somewhat of a hybrid. I do a lot of
Yeah.
the, not necessarily the hiring, but the onboarding and the training. I have zero directs, which I plan on keeping it that way for a long time. I I've kind of had my fill with that, so I try and stay away from those type of decisions. But yeah, I'm mostly a contributor, and the rest is just training and onboarding.
Yeah. And you must have a sense of who's going to work out or who isn't, or what type of person works out and what doesn't, or, that exceeds it, or the person who's just going to be reactive and be an account manager or a great service person.
100%. I think it somewhat goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation on, I think when you see someone that comes on that's looking for a 9 to 5, they typically don't work out in the sales world. But if it's someone that the sky is the limit, they're coachable, that they will do anything that it takes to be successful, those are the ones that you have to keep an eye out for. Those are the ones that are going to be your long-term teammates.
Yeah. The 9 to 5, do you see a lot of demand for that today? It seems like everybody wants to just hang
It's
out.
well, it's bizarre that the way this has kind of evolved to where everyone wants that 9 to 5 remote lifestyle, and that's not it. Like, if you're going to succeed in sales, you're always on. It's the a big a big success of mine is learning that if you're always on, because people don't need you when things are convenient, they
Right.
need you on the weekend, they need you when no one else is there. So just keeping yourself available and making sure that it's, hey, this is a lifestyle, this isn't a 9 to 5, this is the career path that I chose and I'm passionate about it, I'm always on. So when people call me at 7 in the morning on a Saturday or Christmas Eve at 10 p.m., I'm there. So it's
Yeah, and it's not just customer requirements, it's also like thinking through deals.
a million percent, right?
Yeah, right. Because there's no way to turn that off mentally,
You
right?
can't.
Because
You can't.
you got a big commission check attached to it. And whether you need, want, or desire the money or you don't, that's why you're in the job.
Exactly. I would. It's a big reason people get into sales, right? I mean, money has to be a
Right.
driving factor for you. It's not always the primary, but it's up there. It's usually one or two.
And that's it. And this dichotomy of the people who get into sales for money but don't want the responsibility and the overhead and the mental stress of it. And it's like, well, that's service. Go into
Yeah.
service.
Right. Survival of the fittest.
And it is. And people look down on it, go, no, that's what's good about it. And if that's not you,
Right.
that's okay. But I think too many people just, instead of going into service, they go into sales because of the commissions.
It's what makes the world go around.
Yeah.
But I think another thing that sets your one percenters apart is not just being great at the sales, outward looking in, but internally on what your operation looks like, understanding what the services are doing on your side, because that's the biggest partnership that I have, with my company are my operations counterparts. The better the relationship that I have with them, the more successful both of us are going to be.
Yeah. And what do you think is your strongest sales characteristic?
Oof. I would say, again, being able to prioritize, especially in the follow-up process. You could give a 10 out of 10 with your presentation, your proposal, but if the follow-up's not there, like, again, there's a fine line on flooding someone's inbox, but there needs to be a good follow-up system that you have, and being able to prioritize which clients and understanding where they're at in the process and what you have to stay on top of at that point.
And that's it. And I think a lot of people get follow up wrong because in B2B, follow up's the whole game,
The whole game.
right? It's like dating, and everybody constantly reminds me about that, but nobody does it. It's like you get the next date during the current date, and when there's a break in the dating, there's a break in the relationship.
I couldn't agree more. So that's probably the biggest thing for me, at least.
Yeah. And I think you also made the good point that it's the follow up is bringing value at each communication point, not querying about status.
Yeah, well, it's more than ever right now because there's so many things that you can educate them, especially with inflation. And in my world, that's gas prices. If rates are changing, if capacity is getting tighter, especially with the workforce, with how tight staffing has been the last couple of years, if things, that it's almost like that current that comes in and goes out. It's sometimes we have a little bit more capacity. Being able to up them with like real-time updates is huge in the follow-up process. And it doesn't look like you're just flooding their inbox to get the sale. There's actually some value to it.
And is the reason that you don't want direct reports, is it just you just like doing your own thing, or is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it is. I love the autonomy, the freedom. I still so the last few years I was in law enforcement, I was a sergeant, so I had all the directs. But like right now, yeah, right. So, but right now, I love being able to help and coach without being responsible for
For their
for
actions?
everything. I
Yeah.
still I still have that fire though. I'm still the hunter inside. That's
Yeah.
I could see myself doing this for a long time. When the time's right, I would love to go to more of a leadership position, running my own team, but I can't see that happening for quite a while.
And let's go back to empathy, because that's a critical element in the complex sale. Because if you can't understand what they're going through, we just keep talking
Exactly.
instead of
That's like
asking.
trying to fit what is it, a square peg into a round hole. Like
Yeah.
you have to be able to put yourself in their shoes for a little bit. Just because something is important to you does not mean that's important to them. So it's being able to just understand, like we were talking about, some it's all financials, some it is commodity. They're just looking to check a box for the lowest the lowest price. So, and you've got to figure that out. And one of the things that I also learned when it comes to prioritization is when you have a larger pipeline in B2B, getting the bad seeds out is just as important as getting the good seeds in, because it helps you with efficiency, time management. You're not just talking to contacts, you're talking to leads. So you're able to be a lot more efficient with your time as well.
And, and that brings up, because I'm a huge crime show watcher, podcast listener. Because I like to cut through the crap and try and determine if someone's lying or
Right?
not, or who did it. And I gotta believe your ability to read a situation, given the law enforcement background, is pretty high.
Yeah, I would
Because
say it's been a
everyone
huge
lies to
help.
you in law enforcement, right? It's like you assume
No
there was
one
a,
does. Right.
because every interaction, you're not there because you were bored. You were there
Right.
because something went wrong.
Exactly. So that's huge in trying to tell who's window shopping, who are your buyers, who are your window shoppers, who's looking to get a quote for 3 years from now, who's just calling to make a phone call, and then who are the individuals. I need this now. This is priority number one for me. So having that being able to kind of read the room on the first call, you can cut a lot of unnecessary conversations and man hours, that aren't necessary if you do the job up front trying to read the room.
Yeah, because on prospecting, I always compare it. You're either a detective or a census taker.
Right, yeah,
A
that's a good,
census
I've never
taker,
heard that.
well, a census taker goes door to door, asks the same questions.
Right,
And a lot of salespeople do that. They phone number to phone number, ask the
right,
same
sure.
questions. What does a detective do? It's like,
Ask the right questions.
yeah, and who's most likely to help me find the criminal?
Exactly. It's true, it really is. It's every single conversation, even though it may have somewhat of the every sales cycle may be the same, every interaction is different.
Yes.
So that's that. I've never heard that comparison, but yeah, it's spot on.
Right. Because, and a lot of people feel very comfortable with the census taker model because they're busy.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's a numbers game. So eventually they're going to find the criminal, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
But a detective thinks through who has the motive, the means, the opportunity.
That's right. When I build my pipeline, I never want to just build contact pipelines. I want to build potential buyer lead pipelines. So
Yes.
it's being able to weed all of those unnecessary seeds out. That way, I'm able, when I do make or have a conversation or make a touch, it's with the right individuals that sets me up to ask the right questions.
Because I also got to believe in your space, there's a lot of false positives, a lot of people who are curious about it, want to understand it. It'd be a nice to have, but are they going to battle to get budget to get it?
Thousands of them, thousands. So like look, numbers is extremely important, but at the end of the day, it's quality over quantity. It's anytime you're going to do an email campaign with 10,000 prospects, you're going to get your 3 to 4%, but that's going to be significantly higher if your 10,000 are just random contacts or 10,000 of pre-vetted, pre-qualified potential buyers.
Yeah. And when you get a false positive, how can you tell if it's a false? Are you really good at that? You must be. It must be like
Yeah,
your
yeah. I
superpower.
think I think anytime you do an email campaign, that's the biggest false positives that you can get is it's because at that point you're playing the numbers game.
Yeah.
Um, I always say that the more human interaction, the higher the close rate. So your either networking face to face, your door to door interactions, that's going to be a higher close rate. Your cold calls, those type of interactions, it's going to be higher volume, lower close rate. Email campaigns, even higher volume, even lower close rate. So the more higher the human interaction, the higher the close rate.
Yeah. And that continues through the whole sales process. The people
Exactly.
you're spending the most time with are most likely going to be the people that close.
Right.
And I used to tell reps, it's like just dominate their time because if it's not a match, they'll kick you out of the office, right? They're not going to spend time
Exactly.
with you if it doesn't match.
Right.
And if
And
they
then
are, it becomes qualification almost.
another one that I learned pretty early on too. It's the window shoppers that have never intended to buy, but will talk to you for an hour every single time that there's a connection. So again, that goes back to what you were saying, ability to read the room. Like, who is this a valid lead, or is this a looky loo?
Yeah. Great. Hey, this has been a great conversation, Jason. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. Pretty much anywhere you type in Securitas Security. Again, I'm out of Charlotte, North Carolina, so I'm out of any of the Carolina offices as well as Atlanta, Georgia. So either LinkedIn or going to any of the Securitas websites.